Hello, everybody, and welcome to Productivity Summit 2019. I'm Ray Sidney Smith, and I'm your host for the summit. And today, at this moment, I am moderating a panel discussion called The Future of Productivity Technology. And I have a really esteemed panel of technologists here that we're going to get into some of the particulars of what we're really talking about when we talk about the future of productivity technology. And so I'm going to read all the panelists' bios so that you get to know a little bit about who we have here on the panel. I'm going to give them a chance to introduce themselves in just a couple of minutes each, and then we're going to dive into the questions. If you have some questions, I have Andrea Anderson manning the Q&A, and she'll be happy to copy your questions over to me so that I'll be able to see them, and you can go ahead and put those in. We'll have a little bit of time at the end for us to be able to go ahead and answer some live questions from the audience. So feel free to go ahead and do that. So let's get started with our panelists. I put everybody in alphabetical order to be as equal as I could be with regard to things. I tried to be equal here. So first up, we have the A's. And so Andrew Malcolm. Andrew Malcolm is the Chief Product Officer of Evernote, where he leads branding and communications, marketing operations, and product marketing. He previously held roles as VP of Product Marketing and Mobility at HP and Head of Marketing at Skype. So welcome, Andrew.
Pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Next up, I have Christina Willner. Christina is a productivity expert with a special interest in helping people find a productivity system that works for them and beating procrastination. She's the founder of the productivity tool, Amazing Marvin. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Wonderful, wonderful. Next up, I have Michael Solinsky. He's the founder of Noseby, a tool that helps busy professionals and their teams manage time, tasks, and projects, available as a web app, as well as native apps for Mac, Windows, Linux, Android, iPad, iPhone. I think I got them all. And he's already... And Google on the watch. All right, great. Tell me when you've got a Wear OS option.
All right.
He's already more than 11 years running. He's been running Noseby for 11 years. That's really remarkable. Thank you for joining us, Michael.
Thank you.
And then I have Ted Roden. Ted Roden is the founder of Fancy Hands, which provides remote personal assistance for your business and personal life. He focuses on what's really important, and then, or that is Fancy Hands focuses on what's really important, and then they handle the rest. Research, scheduling appointments, making phone calls, data entry. Fancy Hands can help with a team of assistants or one dedicated person. And so welcome, Ted. Thanks for coming.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And last but not least is Troy Christmas. Troy Christmas is the owner of TaskClone. And so his bio says, self-improvement, productivity, and tech have been a passion since he wrote his first line of basic code in the 80s. My basic man. I've been there. After serving as an attorney to Silicon Valley startups and then a business consultant to Fortune 1000 companies, he found meaning in taking simple improvements to public sector organizations and professionals with much smaller budgets. Like many, he grew frustrated with meetings, taking notes, and tracking tasks because he couldn't find a ready solution. So he built one, TaskClone. And so TaskClone seamlessly gets tasks out of digital notes and into your task app or calendar. Since its launch in 2013, he's had the pleasure of solving the frustrations of thousands of professionals worldwide and counseling hundreds on the tools to use and how to use them together. The tools to use and how to use them together. So welcome, Troy.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And so, folks, I'm not trying to not look at you, but my notes are off to the side. So if you're seeing my side profile, that's why. But I'm going to now turn it over to each of you just to kind of give us just 2 minutes, kind of telling us a little bit more about what I said in your bio. So let's start off just alphabetically again. Andrew, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks again for having me. I've been at Evernote for about 4 years, but I have lived the Evernote way of life since my birthday back in 2011. So as a company, we like to think that we were the ones who took personal productivity digital back in 2008 when we launched with the iPhone as one of the first mobile apps that allowed you to capture anything, save it forever, and find it from any connected device. And now what we've been working on for the last 4 years or so has really been about blending the lives that we lead in our personal world and our professional world. So I became an Evernote user because I was a really crappy manager in 2011, and I needed a better way to take meeting notes, as you were describing for Troy, and have one-on-ones and follow up with people. And that was all good and great, except my personal life also had a lot of things that needed to be more productive as well. And when my father got sick about 10 months after I started using Evernote, I needed a place to manage his medical records and then his legal documents, and ultimately wrote his eulogy. And now for me, Evernote has just become a part of my way of life. It's the thing I know that my kids' health records are in, as well as all of the things that I have to do for our board meeting next month. And so I became passionate about that because in the end, it's these things that we accomplish on a day-to-day basis that really define what it is that we contribute to the world. And I'm super proud that I'm to be part of the people who think about how can we play a small part in what are tens of millions of people's lives every day to allow them to accomplish those things that are most important to them. And if I can do a little bit of that off to the side, then I think I've made a great contribution to things.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And next up, I have Christina. Christina.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, I'm Christina, and I'm the founder of Amazing Marvin. And if you're wondering, why have I never heard of Amazing Marvin? We're a very new tool, and it's basically me and my husband running it right now. We're self-funded on purpose. And we've only, been out for about 2 years and working with our very early users on just kind of perfecting the product. And only next year, we're going to get more out there and let more people know that we exist, basically. Marvin is also something I built for myself originally because I just was completely overwhelmed with all the stuff I had to do. I was running another business. And I think we offer something kind of unique in the productivity space, and partially because I actually have never used a productivity app before I built Marvin. So I was thinking just completely out of the box and just thinking about what I want. And I started building it. And yeah, we have a couple of kind of unique takes, and one is customization. We just feel like different things work for different people. So that's a big focus so that you can easily kind of build, the to-do app that you want. And also because I'm a big procrastinator, I know that just having a list of the things you do doesn't mean that you will actually do them. And so I'm trying to make Marvin really support the user in actually getting stuff done through psychology. So there's a lot of features that are trying to tackle the hurdles that really keep people from getting work done. And yeah, it's just quite a playful take on productivity, I hope. So yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Christina's actually in the virtual exhibit booth parts of today. So if you want, you can go visit and see Christina there. So welcome, Christina. Okay, next up alphabetically, I think I have you, Michael Solinsky.
Yeah, great to be here. I launched Nozbe actually more than 12 years ago now. So quite a while. And Andrew, I'm one of the also first Evernote users from back to 2008. So big fan of Evernote. And actually, Nozbe was one of the first tools to integrate with Evernote back in the day. So yeah, big fan. I built Nozbe just like I think people here, just scratch my own itch in the very beginning to have my own productivity tool to simplify getting things done actually, and make it digital. But I did it when the iPhone launched, so in 2007. So with all that, we've grown as you mentioned, Nozbe is available on all the mobile platforms, including the Apple Watch. So I've grown with this technology, and it's amazing. That's why I love technology so much. Over the last years, Nozbe has been helping busy professionals to get stuff done, but we turned more into teams now. So as we've grown our team, and we are an all remote team. So everybody in my company works from home. We live in different countries, different cities, different places, in different time zones. We decided to also turn Nozbe a little bit more from just personal to-do list, personal, time management thing to a way for teams to communicate internally. This way they can, communicate through tasks and really get stuff done together. So this is our next focus right now. We are on the verge of launching a new product, Nozbe Teams, which will take this to a whole new level. So I'm actually more excited about this right now than just personal productivity, but more about team productivity, because I think right now we are in this very interconnected world, and we can just get so much stuff done better together. So that's the thing. So and as an additional info with Augusto Pinot, I wrote back in the day a book, iPad Only, because iPad is my main device, my main computer. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael, and welcome.
Thank you.
Ted, you're next up on my list.
Okay. Hi, guys. So just like everybody else, I started a company and scratched my own itch. For me, it was about 10 years ago. I had a full-time job working in the R&D group at the New York Times. I had a brand new baby, and I got a book deal. And so I had, all these lists of all these different things I needed to get done. I had I had Evernote, I had all the things. And the one thing I didn't have was just any ability to get anything actually done. I wanted to take my wife out to dinner. Dinner is easy. I did dinner every night. Every night I have dinner, but I could not make a reservation to go and do it. And so I thought, hey, I would pay somebody to do this for me, to just go and make a reservation. This is before there were apps online. And so I built Fancy Hands to literally make a phone call to make a reservation for myself. And that was 10 years ago. The whole thing turned into this company. In the meantime, I started it for myself. I launched it. I realized it would be better if I could get more assistants who would do a better job if I had more users. So I had more, so I opened it up to everybody else. People came on. I eventually brought in somebody else to be the CEO for us. That was there for a few years, and now he actually left at the beginning of this summer, and it's back to me as the CEO and doing all the different things. But yeah, it's Fancy Hands is simply an app to help you get things done by actually doing them for you, which is sort of our differentiator.
Definitely unique.
Yeah, so that's me.
Wonderful. Welcome, Ted. Welcome. Troy Christmas. Troy.
Great. Well, I'm going to hopefully try to go quick. A little bit about me. When I made the transition out of private sector to public sector, it was a lot more meaningful work for me. But what I found was all the fancy hands I had to do work for me were gone. Our budgets were much smaller. Our ability to get things done with people just was not there. And the technology was at least 15, 20 years behind what I was dealing with in the private sector. So I had to try to get creative myself. Task Clone was actually born from me forgetting something that was in my notes. I went to a meeting, wrote something down, never made it to my task list, and it didn't get done. And I was frustrated that it was 2012, and I had to go copy something in order to remember what got done. And so that's where the journey started. And I'm happy now that Task Clone connects, 3 of your panelists. We connect Evernote with Noseby and Amazing Marvin, all right? Because a lot of what's challenging is the connectivity between the different systems. So you'll hear me talk later about personal productivity platforms, a platform that's connected to a variety of different systems that allow you to get more done because of the connectivity between them. And so that's what Task Clone was all about. We are trying to reduce friction in people's lives by making sure that when they write something down once or they type something in once, it doesn't have to be retyped or re-entered in order to have it available to get something done. I think we've come full circle. When we started, I was actually a OneNote user or a paper user and then a OneNote user. OneNote didn't have an API, and so Evernote did. And I jumped on the bandwagon with Evernote and have been there ever since. Since that time, OneNote's created an API, Google Docs has created an API, and handwriting recognition has gotten good enough that we're actually going to paper. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through.
Wonderful. Thank you all for just giving your brief introductions so that we all know a little bit more about you. And so let's get into the questions. There is such meat here today, and I racked my brain when I thought about who are the right people, the right mix of people that I could bring together to talk about this very kind of lofty thought, right? What is the future of productivity technology? And these are the people who I think will have perspectives that will actually help you all understand it just a little bit more, so that you can use that in your own productive lives. And so let's start off with the first question. And what I wrote here was, what factors do you consider in planning for future design and development of productivity technology? And I'm going to punt this one first to you, Andrew, because you are Chief Product Officer at Evernote. And so this is something that you have to actually think about on a very large scale, as Evernote has over 220 million global users. What do you think about and consider in planning for future design considerations in your technology?
Yeah. I think the first thing we think about is that there, almost ironically, is no class that teaches you how to organize as you're growing up. And the ways that the world has emerged to try to deal with the deluge of data that we're getting are now fascinating on a very high level side of things, right? If you look at Silicon Valley, there are organizational consultants running around where people are hiring them for their high school students because they're trying to teach people how to organize. But because you don't teach anybody how to organize, there's no common system that people all have. And so people who become super productive usually often develop their own. Even if you're in a GTD framework, you have your own take on what GTD is. And so what we think about are a couple of kind of principles of what we think it means to be organized. And the first one is you have to have some degree of flexibility. I think Christina mentioned this and others did as well, that because no two people really organize in the same way, you have to be able to adapt to those things. And if you're taking on the team challenge that Michael is, you're going to have 6 people in there and none of them organize in the same way. And now you're going to try to get a team of people to organize like that. And so the first one is some degree of flexibility to allow people to customize to their workflow that's out there. And then the second thing that we think about a lot is if you're building, you have to choose to some extent whether you're building for people who already have that system or people who are building that system. So if you build for people who are early in career, then you can, to some extent, help them formulate how they're going to be organized for the future. But if you're building for old people like me who have this gray in their beard and stuff, right? Like I don't change well, right? And so when you think about how you're going to build something, you know, you've got all these people who have these fundamentally completely different takes on organization or productivity, and they might be dead right that they are better, but getting dinosaurs like me to change is really, really hard. And so how you build the bridge from where I am today to where you think I should be in the future is probably the second thing that we talk about a lot, because the blessing and the curse of having 250 million people interact with your product is that you've had this giant scale, and yet at the same time, you can't tick them off by doing something that doesn't align with how they do things today. And so those are probably 2 things that maybe others don't necessarily encounter all the time, but that's a lot of what we think about how things are we need to accommodate people's ways of working right now to really not necessarily try to disrupt what they're doing, but really enhance what they're doing.
Does anybody want to follow up on Andrew's thoughts there and have any additions?
I was just going to add that, you know, we're going to probably get to artificial intelligence and personalization. And so for where I sit at the intersection where everybody's trying to connect stuff. And it is amazing that what Malcolm Andrew is saying is absolutely true, that no 2 people have the same system, even if they're using the same tools, and they jump around and bounce around and change. And they're often asking me for advice. What should I use? How should I use it? What should I put together? And it's very personal. And so it's a challenge with all this big data and personalization and artificial intelligence to personalize the product and also have a system that's understandable. And I think, you know, Evernote at its scale has to deal with that. And I'm sort of watching it from a different space.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so we're going to move on to question 2. Question 2 I have here as we have new technology sprouting up around us every day, including natural language processing, machine learning. We just, as Troy mentioned, artificial intelligence, and along with the Internet of Things, IoT, we have smart wearables, watches, and all kinds of other new devices. And then we have augmented reality and even virtual reality now coming about. Even Facebook just recently announced the Facebook Horizon, where we're going to have this virtual reality platform with the Oculus brand kind of commanding that. And so what technologies do you believe will help us really level up productivity in our own personal and professional lives, and why? And kind of a tangential question is, do you already have, or are you planning to incorporate any of these technologies into your products? And so I'm gonna toss this one to you, Troy, because I think that probably makes most sense. And then anyone, please, by all means, just raise your hand and let me know if you have any other tangential thoughts. But Troy, you already started kind of talking about this, and I'm curious, what are you thinking about Task Clone and perhaps other products that you're building? What do you think about as it relates to all these new technologies that are kind of sprouting up?
Well, I think the challenge that I put in front of myself is how do you reduce friction in people's lives? And when you reduce friction in people's lives, you create freedom for them to focus on whatever they want to focus on. And I think the future is using these technologies to take the overhead sort of off of the individual. And what I mean by taking the overhead off of the individual is there's so many things that we have to think about now that we don't want to think about. And if we can use the technology to personalize the things that we need to take off of our plate, that will help us be more productive, help us focus on the places where we're gifted, the places that we are able to add the most value. And so we're at the very beginning stages. You know, I've been kicking around a lot of AI and machine learning technologies, and we're at the very beginning stages. And it's pretty amazing, even at the beginning stages. I think that the machine learning that will basically take massive amounts of input and be able to then personalize or structure things that are optimizing, continually optimizing. So you're able to continually optimize a procedure or a process by giving it more data. I think that connected with the Internet of Things, where now everything is smart and everything is knowing and everything can respond to you. Those are going to be the things that are most powerful. Right now in TaskClone, we're basically just using natural language processing. So if you enter a event into Evernote and you say, I need to meet Ray at 4 o'clock on Thursday, it will populate your calendar with that just by you typing it in natural language. In the future, that's what I sort of alluded to. Handwriting recognition has gotten big enough and good enough, frankly, that we're incorporating that. So we are launching TaskCam, TaskCam. If you go to taskcam.com, you can sign up. We should be launching by the end of this month. Basically, you take a picture of your handwritten notes. It extracts the tasks and sends them to Noseby or Amazing Marvin, and it extracts your events and sends them to Google Calendar. And so it's aligned to the same things we do with Evernote, OneNote, and soon Google Docs. That's the next step for us. But I think that's where we're just going to try to remove a little bit more friction from people's lives.
Well, we have a podcast interview to figure out there, Troy. So Ted, go ahead, Michael, and then I want to just direct it to Ted after that. So Michael, go for it.
So no, I just wanted to say that when I remember when I first met David Allen of GTD fame, and I talked to him and about the ideas I have for my product, and he said, no, there's no way that in the future your app will be so intelligent it will tell you what you should be working on now. And I think we are getting to this moment where we can challenge that, and these apps, especially that we have all these devices that they know where we are, what we're doing, we can start studying people's habits by crunching this all this data and everything, plus what's the weather like and everything else, and it can actually tell you judging on all that, you should be doing this because other things, you won't be productive right now. So I think we are getting to this moment.
Yeah, it's funny when I flick up my app drawer, Google now tells me I'm a Google Pixel person, and I flick it up and it always knows what app I'm going for, and I just find that to be just so refreshing. Ted, how do you think about this in terms of you have real people doing real work? How do you facilitate some of this new technology that's happening as it relates to the technology you're building into Fancy Hands? Because Fancy Hands is a lot of technology in the background with humans incorporated into that. Can you give some insight?
Yeah. So we're a pretty good mix. And one of the things with this that I'm really excited about is sort of the natural language stuff. But I think we're really far away. I think we're a lot farther away than people want to admit. I was just swearing at Google on the drive home last night because it could not understand what I was saying. It couldn't understand what I was saying, even when I was trying to spell it out, like literally, because it doesn't work like that. You can't spell what you're going to say. And when machines get stuff wrong, and it's about what you have to do in a day, it's much more frustrating than anything else. And I think I think we're, whether or not we want to admit it, we're not there yet. I think we're going to get there. But I think the important thing isn't to sort of think we're going to lean on all this stuff as the way that it's going to work in the future, but that we're working on baby steps. And that's sort of the way we work at Fancy Hands, is that we have a huge data set of what people want to get done. And on the other side, we have a huge data set of what it takes to actually get that work done. And we know we learned very early on that we can't automate all that. And we can't automate even the stuff that you'd think we could. But what we end up doing is, rather than saying, let's solve this problem entirely, we do it a little bit more like we turn baseball into t-ball. So we understand like that you're gonna need to hit the ball, and that we'll put it right in front of you, but a human's still got to do it. And we do everything we can to make sure that the computers aren't going to get it wrong, and that, you know, where a human can step in and not get, you know, and can be right. Like if I could have spelled the song I was looking for to Google yesterday, it would have solved all my problems, but I couldn't because they don't have that ability. And so we, you know, for us, it's to make sure that we can always essentially spell out to let the user spell out to us exactly what we want to do. So I'm really excited about making things easier, not necessarily solving all the problems with all these things. And I'm not super bullish on augmented reality or virtual reality or things like that. Internet of connected devices, I think, are going to be incredible. The fact that I was yelling at my car about that song is a pretty amazing thing, despite the fact that the only thing I remember about the whole drive was that we got it wrong. The fact that I was arguing with my car is pretty cool, and that I do that at my house. I can do that with my TV, with my phones, and so a lot of that stuff is super cool. I just, you know, I think it's important that we not get ahead of ourselves and understand that just because we have like the NLP for Dummies book and we, you know, put all our models into it, that's not going to solve these problems. It's if we can figure out the small steps we can take to make one little piece easier, that kind of stuff can really change your business, can change your life. But it's when you start to like pull back and say, oh, we're going to solve all these problems, that you're going to run into issues. And so at Fancy Hands, we try to take the very small things that we do 1,000 times a day and make those easier and better.
Wonderful. And now you've ruined my desire to have Kit from Knight Rider drive me around and do my bidding. Christina, I wanted to turn it over to you for your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a brilliant question, and I think I have maybe a bit of a unique take. Because on one hand, I love technology, obviously, but I think technology is definitely a double-edged sword, and we all know how technology has also kind of been a huge problem in productivity and creating a lot of distractions and just extra stress. And I think I don't really see the big opportunities in anything that maybe helps with efficiency, because I don't feel like that's currently the limiting factor. So I kind of solved this question from the back, like what makes us more productive? What is keeping us from being productive right now? And I feel like, sure, if you can interact with an interface through language, you will save some time versus clicking buttons. But is that really going to make the big dent? And maybe, you know, there are some amazing productivity cyborg people out there who they're already at their limit, and that's just going to push them that much farther. But from my experience, I feel like the limiting factor in productivity are often very human problems, emotional problems, procrastination, overwhelm, not even maybe being sure what our priorities are. And that's kind of, you know, what sometimes people forget what productivity is about. It's not about work output necessarily. It's relating to how efficient is it to get to a certain outcome, to a goal. And there, I feel like the opportunity I see, and that's also the direction I'm taking Marvin in, is with machine learning and artificial intelligence to create something that connects more with the person on the other end as a human. And I think that's extremely difficult to do. But, you know, when you understand patterns, so you have data about that person, what they get done, where they get done. And I'm also more of a fan of actually letting the person decide what information they want to give. So, you know, it's fairly easy to tell a program what your goals are, how important one goal is over another, maybe if it has a deadline. You know, versus having things collect that information about us. And then, yeah, just the computer comparing all the data it has and figuring out what's helping, what messages, like sort of almost like a personal coach, what can it tell you in the right moments to help you get over hurdles, to make you feel better, to help you make decisions. And so that's kind of where I see a big opportunity in creating just more human technology, I guess, to connect more with the human and help them get over anything that's keeping them from being productive.
I want my task manager to say, Ray, you looking a little bit distressed. How about a latte? And just send me A drone can bring me a latte or something like that. So I really appreciate everybody's diverse thoughts here. And on the topic of diversity, I wanted to steer us toward our next question, which is device diversity. And that is, we have so many different types of devices, different makes and models, and just ways in which form factor comes into place, plus operating system diversity and fragmentation, and then of course access to the internet, that is mobile accessibility and local network accessibility. How do you make decisions about new features to products based on that kind of device diversity and fragmentation and so on and so forth? And I'm going to start, Andrew, you on that point again, just because where do you even begin to kind of challenge that issue?
I mean, it is an unbelievable challenge. I'm so impressed by the way Michael talks about the cross-platform world with such confidence, because I think that the fragmentation of form factors has created really big problems for apps that are trying to be everywhere, because just simply maintaining everything that we have from, the browser extensions, and all of a sudden, Safari 13 comes out and you're like, oh, wow, you guys really changed the API for that. That pretty much broke everything. Or ooh, the Outlook integration now has a completely different schema that we now need to go fix. And really quickly, I think we found that our engineering efforts were spending more time maintaining than we were innovating. And so I think that my general perspective is now choose very wisely. Choose on the places that are going to really add value to your users, because we end up in the 250,000 problem, as I call it, where everything we built has a 250,000 people that use it. And that isn't necessarily a ton when you're talking about the size that we are, but it's enough that you don't want to upset them, right? And you've made this promise to them. And now we're constantly trying to figure out how to unify more stuff so that we are, thin client, fat server, rather than fat client, thin server to get there. Having said that, I think it's undeniable that the movement toward mobile first has changed input-output mechanisms beyond QWERTY so fundamentally that we have to start thinking about that. And you have to think about those form factors in their entirety. How do you interact with the device? How do you put things in? How do you get things out? What do you want to do with that device? And then how does your experience actually be enhanced by moving across different form factors? So people have often had this really almost simplistic version of looking at the mobile device as a consumption device and the desktop as a creation device. And that has proven not to be true now with Gen Z, right? More notes. So we just cracked, I think, the 10 billion note mark, and we're seeing more notes created on mobile than we are on desktop. But if you look at the types of notes that people are creating, well, it's pretty unrealistic that somebody thumbs out a 500-word diatribe of an email on their mobile phone. But it's also physically impossible for most laptops to go take a picture of a whiteboard. And so how do you start to optimize those experiences based on what you think the primary use case is, what the user's really trying to accomplish with the form factor?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Michael, thoughts?
Yeah. So many. Yeah. Andrew, you're completely right. I mean, when I started Nozbe, it was supposed to be an application through web for a desktop, and that's it. And life was easy back then. And then iPhone showed up and everything went how it did. So right now, our customers, they sign up more on mobile than anywhere else. They don't want their project task manager to have to be like a companion app for the mobile. No. They want the whole management on the mobile. They want the whole power on the mobile. We have a customer who is a big law firm, and the managing partner is using our app on iOS entirely, and he never logs in on his laptop, and he just pushes our app to the limit, of all the tasks and notifications and everything else. It's crazy stuff, but people want to have this power on the palm of their hands, or even wrists, So it's crazy stuff, and but I'm loving it. I mean, this is a great, I'm sure Andrew as well. This is a challenge we love. So to bring the power to the small form factor, and on the other hand, as Andrew mentioned, to leverage the power that it has. So like, for example, that the mobile phone has access to other sensors than the laptop has, or has a better camera, or all that stuff. So this way we can still leverage the form factor, but still have the power there. So it's a dancing scheme, I think, and it's really amazing from our experience as well to see what our customers and users are, just how much they're pushing the envelope on each of these devices. And true as well is to choose wisely the platforms, really, to make sure that you can really support the ones that you can really support and really stand behind them, because it seemed so easy. Well, we can support everything, but you can't really support everything. So you have to really just choose your battles wisely and just be there, but then really make an effort to really help the customers and help the users push the envelope there, and just really be really productive and really have the power when they want it.
Wonderful. Go for it, Troy.
Yeah, I just wanted to first thank Andrew and Evernote for tackling this challenge. I mean, TaskClone is a back-end service, and we don't generally have to deal with any of this, and they solve all of our problems, and we use their API to abstract away all of these problems. As we're launching TaskCam, which is now going to be on mobile so people can take pictures of their notes, we're entering into that fray for the first time. And we're trying what's now called a progressive web app. And it's built entirely on JavaScript, works in every platform that uses JavaScript, and scales to size and has some access to, for example, the device camera. We'll see how that goes. I mean, the native apps were the only way to go for quite some time. This is a new chapter. Hopefully the progressive web apps and things like that will help with some of these challenges.
Christina, go for it.
Yeah, just quickly, I think this is probably where some of the newer apps have a little bit of an advantage, because there have been, obviously also new frameworks available. So we use React and React Native from Facebook, and it allows us to, just write one application and put that on Linux, Windows, Mac, web. And we also use React Native for the mobile apps. So we don't have to have two mobile apps, basically, which I think, is why we were able as a two-person team to create a to-do app, because a to-do app, might seem simple on the surface. Everybody knows it's really not. So yeah, I think there is a bit of an advantage if you can take advantage of newer technology to build your tool.
Yeah, so we're seeing that newer players in the market are capable of iterating and launching faster because there are these kinds of frameworks that are out there, like Electron and other platforms that allow you to be able to basically push out there. So definitely curious and a wonderful place to kind of watch. I want to just switch gears here as we make our way through. We're almost at the kind of halfway mark, a little past that. And my fourth question kind of takes us into emulating a company in another industry that's kind of doing everything right. And what company would that be? And I'd like to actually hear that from each of you, that if you thought about the way in which Evernote is doing this, or Noseby, or Fancy Hands, or TaskClone, or Amazing Marvin, how you're doing things now, if you thought about a completely other industry, like waste management, what company is out there doing it all well that you would try to do? Who wants to go first? Back of the line. Troy, go for it.
So I'm just going to say I'm too much of a critic to find anybody that's doing everything well. That's just not going to happen.
Exactly.
I'm here in Fremont, California, and Tesla is right here in our backyard. They are absolutely not doing everything well. But there are a couple of things that I would take from them that really I think are important for our industry and in any industry. So the first is what is typically called the triple bottom line, so that you're leveraging your company or optimizing your company to not just make profit. That's just one bottom line, but also to take care of people and the planet. And thinking about when we're developing anything, how is that going to impact people, the people in your organization, the people outside your organization, the planet, and of course you have to make a living. The other thing that I would say is that their core product just solves a really common problem about getting from point A to point B, but it does it in a compelling way. So one of the challenges for all of us is figuring out, okay, we're really solving people's common everyday challenges and making them a little bit easier and better. But we're trying to do it in a compelling way, and hopefully with a little bit of joy mixed in, and delight as we go through the process. So that's one thing that's another thing that I think they've taken on. And then the other thing is they understood almost the importance and maybe the primacy of the ecosystem. So it's great to have an electric car, but you got nowhere to charge it, you got a problem. So tackling the ecosystem that your product lives in, and being thoughtful about that on the front end instead of trying to figure out on the back end, I think is another thing that I would take away from Tesla.
I want to add, because Troy, very, very good thing to start with Tesla. One of the things I was surprised with when I bought my first new car and I brought it to the dealer and asked them if there are any updates to my car. And he's like, no updates. Your car should be the same way it was manufactured, and that's it. And I'm like, yeah, but Tesla has updates, right? I mean, this is like a complete, like a thing from a smartphone that we have automatic updates. Your car is in the garage and it gets automatic updates. It gets better, faster, has more features while you were sleeping. That like this kind of concept, like a software concept from a completely different industry. They put it in the car industry where no other car manufacturers, I'm talking about, really sophisticated car manufacturers, even thought about. Like this is like a cool thought process.
Yeah, I recently came into contact with a chimney sweep company, and they are implementing this really amazing technology behind the scenes to be able to help people understand what they need to do in order to keep their homes healthier, the air quality and so on and so forth. And just this notion of thinking about what are the things that you're doing, but how they're actually affecting the people in kind of a downstream way, pun intended. And it's like you need to think about the ramifications of your product, maybe just not in your own industry. And that's kind of where my question was leading in that way. And I'm just always curious to see how people think about themselves in relation to other industries.
So I would offer two thoughts. The first one is, what do we try to emulate from other industries that I think are principles that might be true for anything? And for us, or at least me, the way I think about that is, I think the entire just-in-time Kaizen movement for manufacturing is still incredibly relevant, right? When you think about productivity and what productivity really was defined as a long time ago, it was, could you get more widgets through your manufacturing line? Yep. And they learned a lot of principles along the way about what it takes to get more widgets through there. Now, the widgets for our knowledge working based economies in the US or the developed world aren't the same. So you have to adapt that to what you're thinking about. But I still think a lot of this just-in-time stuff is what's really cool. Like, Ray, the way you were talking about Google putting the right app in front of you, that's kind of a principle of just-in-time. And then I think there's the output, where what are the industries that you're trying to affect? Because almost every user of one of our apps or our pieces of technology probably doesn't work in tech, or you may over index to people who work in tech, but there are a lot of people who are working in grocery delivery or grocery or whatever it is that you need to adapt to as well. And I think that the principle that we're starting to see is that almost every business is becoming tech enabled, right? Yep. You're seeing even the most maybe stodgy of industries start to be like, maybe I should actually try to adapt my SAP instance so that my warehouse worker doesn't walk over to this terminal 27 times an hour in order to log something in, right? And I think we will start to see more and more technologists go into these other industries to think about, how do I go disrupt this from working inside the company as opposed to building a startup that just fundamentally does this differently? Because it's the little nuanced areas around things like the supply chain and things like that that you can apply technology to and completely continue to change orders of magnitude more efficiency.
Great. Thank you for those comments. And so I am going to move us on to our next question. And I saw a little bit of conversation in the live stream chat about data privacy and data protection and so on and so forth. And this is a big topic that I wanted to spend a little bit of time on before we open up to other questions. I think we might have enough time for 2 more questions, and then I'll open it up to the audience. And so my question here, question 5, is how does the Newfound focus on data privacy and protection of consumer and business data across borders play into how you develop your productivity technologies for the future? I think it's testament to the fact that we are all in different places and in even different countries, and we are connected in real time, talking to an audience out there wherever they might be. All that they needed was an internet connection. And so when borders go away in terms of access, they don't go away in terms of law. And so, and
That's
certainly
the
not.
problem.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how do you guys kind of deal with that notion? Even like, where do you even begin with? Who wants to tackle that first?
Well, I can talk about where we begin. I always just begin by talking to our lawyer, saying, seriously, tell me what I have to do here. And so I don't want to touch anything about the borders. I'm assuming you're talking about the GER, whatever. And to be honest with that, you know, that's above my pay grade, even though I am the CEO. Our lawyers told us what to do, and we do that. And there's not a lot of room to think in there that you do this or you do that. You know, you have to do whatever. But what's interesting for us, and I think it's probably interesting for other people sort of here in this group, is that people are asking us to save more information, not less. You know, people are like, at Evernote, I'm sure is the same way. They want to share more information with you, not less information. Fancy Hands, we had to launch a whole separate product to be able to store different types of data that we couldn't store carefully on the main product. And so, you know, with like data privacy and sharing, I think it's a strange group of people to ask that question to, because pretty much everybody, all of our users are storing data they would share almost with nobody else. What they have to do later that day, what, you know, in Evernote's case, their medical records. With us, you know, every detail about their life. So it is a strange, we are a strange group of people for data privacy, but I'm sure that's part of the reason why we all are very encrypted, I would imagine, this group. But yeah, so that's my thoughts.
So I guess we have a user in every country on the planet now, and there is just there's no feasible way that anybody could index all of the laws, from GDPR to now we have state-specific laws about what California will let you do and what you can do, what sort of information you can use in California. And I think the reality of all of that is, many years ago, our founder wrote the 3 laws of data protection that I think fly above anything that the legislatures could come up with. Your data is yours, your data is protected, and you can take your data with you. And we sort of say, if we abide by those things, then we probably are within 90% compliance of what everybody else wants us to do. And so we start there. And it's actually one of the criteria that the product team has to evaluate anything that they do against. You can't violate one of the laws. The laws are sacrosanct. And so that, I think it's almost going to have to be a cultural thing inside of companies to say, is it part of what we do or not part of what we do? And Google has basically said, look, in exchange for letting us know everything about you, we're going to make you better, your day better. But we're going to know everything about you. And you're going to have to be okay with that. And I think that there are going to be these moments where we start to say, if Facebook and Google are the public narratives of my life, then what is the private narrative of my life? Where is it that I put the things that I'm not ready to tell the world about? And I think a lot of that is going to end up in apps like you're talking about today. And that promise is, people are customers are going to probably have to pay for that promise to some extent as well. Because if you're not going to make your customers your product by advertising to them, then you're going to have to make money some other way. And customers are going to have to understand that too.
Yeah, I think the freemium model can only go so far in the world. And I think the future of productivity technologies has borne out that when a task manager closes because it was poorly managed, mostly poorly managed, but the other side is that it didn't have a proper business model, that affects people in a very, very fundamental way, because task managers are so elemental. And so any productivity technology like that is going to cause so much collateral damage that it's really important to kind of consider that. And I just don't see productivity as being the place where you mine data about people. It's like one of the most intimate spaces, right? It's like where you put like buy new underwear. Why would you do that?
Yeah, but Ray, we just talked about machine learning and all that stuff. So on the other hand, you want to make sure that you for people, you can kind of learn their habits, learn their ways to help them improve. So there is a fine line that you have to really watch out there. And I think in all of our cases, the thing that we care about most is the trust that we are being given. But as Ted said, like people share with us like the most intimate stuff. So this is like one thing that you have to really manage the trust, and this is the key. And second thing, I think encryption, as much as can you encrypt, the better. Like for example, in our case, we still don't encrypt like task names because we share them among with all these devices and with all these people. It's just so hard to do it yet, but I think the new technologies will be coming to help us with that. But for example, we can already encrypt certain parts of data, like we can encrypt documents added to tasks, for example, so they are encrypted. And this way, lawyers are not worried that when they upload a very important legal thing, then it's encrypted. It's not going to be stolen if somebody breaks into one of our servers. But so it's all that, and it's immense responsibility that we have to really protect this data and to protect this and to back up this thing. So we've been designing our infrastructure the same in this way, that even if our main server blew up today, we could replicate Nozbe within 5-15 minutes with the same data before the blow up. So of course we have fewer users than you have Evernote, but still quite a few. So it's very hard to manage all that, but it all comes down to trust. And as Andrew said, people have to know that sometimes you really have to just pay up a little bit at least to support the systems that really that you trust with your data. So yeah.
So I'm probably going to say something provocative on this one. When we started TaskClone, it was at a period where everybody who was a Fortune 1000 company with billions of dollars of revenue was getting hacked. That's when we started. So we didn't have any belief at that time that we were somehow going to have a better infrastructure than all of these companies that we were seeing. So we are doing our due diligence like all the others. We're looking at new encryption technology. We're doing all the rest of it. But the reality is information is at risk. And so back to what Andrew said is around the three laws, and what Michael said about trust. Trust is saying what you're going to do and then doing it. And so we try to be very clear about here's what we do with your information, here's how it's handled, here's what we do, here's what we don't do, and then we live by it. And folks have to make those kinds of choices that Andrew and Michael were both talking about in that environment, and people are choosing, and that's sort of how we handle it.
Wonderful. I appreciate that. I would only make the only additional note I would note to everybody who's watching is that cybersecurity hygiene is an obligation. It's not a privilege. It's something that you have to really take to heart, and learning, unfortunately, in an age where technology is a part of everyone's life. We live in an interdependent, technologically enabled world, and so cybersecurity hygiene is just there. And the more I think, and the more productivity technologies can educate people in just small ways, in small little behavioral interventions in the software can be really, really useful. Like, hey, your passwords that you're putting into the notes of this thing that are not hashed and not, encrypted. Come on, why are you doing that? It's little things.
Yeah, I mean, right, there's a very simple example. Like we say, why don't you attach this document to your task? It's encrypted and everything. No, I send them from via email. Really? This very important thing, you just sent plain text via email. Yeah, thank you. So yeah.
Yeah. So for folks to understand, email is an open protocol. It is one of the fundamental infrastructure pieces of the internet. It is not secure unless you take very great lengths to do that. And so yeah, that's what Michael's talking about. It's quite unfortunate that people don't understand very elemental pieces of how they use technology today and the infrastructure associated with it. Okay, I want to make it a little bit more upbeat. I'm going to bring us up a level from talking about cybersecurity and the dark web nature to my sixth and probably final question before we turn it over to the audience. And so I wanted to ask each of you, just give you a minute or two to talk about where would you like to see society / human civilization benefiting most from personal productivity technologies. How do you see human civilizations really benefiting from the technologies that you're seeing developed out there, as well as your own? And so let's start off with, I haven't heard from you in a while, Christina. Christina, how about we start with you and we'll work our way backwards up on my screen.
Sure. So I mean, like I said before, to me, productivity is about reaching your goals, creating the life that you want, being able to do the things that you want to do. And I just hope that personal productivity technologies will enable people to do that more easily. And yeah, because I think that creates a lot of unhappiness in people. And I see that a lot because I'm, dealing with a lot of people who also struggle with procrastination, of just how miserable it can make you if the things you envision you want to do are not matching up what you can actually do. And I think sometimes the focus in productivity is just a lot on doing more, being more, and forgetting that we're humans and we have limits. And I just hope, that technology will connect more with that human element and seeing those limitations and work with that, and just really help people be less stressed and happier and more effective and feel in control.
Troy?
Sure.
Oh, there you go.
Sure. I think I would really just piggyback on what Christina is saying. I think of productivity as creating opportunities for us to be our best selves. And I'm one of those folks that believes that everybody's gifted, but we spend a lot of our time not working in our gifts. And so I'm expecting that the personalization of the productivity environment, I won't call it just software because there's a whole environment around, is really going to help people spend more time in flow or in their gifts or in the things where they add the most value to themselves and to the greater society. If you add value to society, it will flow back to you. And so I'm expecting that the technology will do that. I think there's a huge risk. We're living that risk right now. I would want the technology to help level the playing field. Right now, the gap is growing. Those who have access, those who have understanding, those who, for example, understand what AI is and understand what machine learning is and are starting to apply it, are in a very small group. And there are a lot of other folks who will benefit downstream, but the lion's share of that benefit will probably go to a few. So that's one of the things that I concerned about. And then I think there are great opportunities to remove barriers in communication. I mean, we see that in this panel right now, what we're able to do, and with the translation capabilities that are existing. I mean, the walls are really coming down, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen with that.
I'd love it if we could bring in multi-language, real-time translation. Google Translate does some level of that right now, and it would be just amazing if we could really level that up. So yeah, very excited to see, because that actually came up recently, because I thought, you know what, there are probably books that people have written this year that someone probably wrote 10 years ago in another language, and nobody knows about those other books because they're silos of data. And we all know that Google's, or maybe you don't all know this, but I know Google's mission statement by heart, which is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And the nature of that is just such a compelling mission. And I think the world of us all being able to do that kind of thing is just such an imperative, especially in the productivity space. Andrew, what are your thoughts on that?
So getting organized is the second most prevalent New Year's resolution in the US, virtually every year, right after losing weight. And people stick with it just about as well because it's hard. And I think what Troy and Christina were ultimately saying or highlighting is the one truly finite thing in this world is time. And how you spend those 24 hours a day is the biggest decision you make every minute. And if a productivity tool can free up more of that time, whether it's to focus on the things that bring you joy, to focus on what matters most to you, I think that's really what I strive for. And what I want Evernote and all these tools to do for me is give me 15 more minutes with the kids, right? Let me play golf once a month that I don't get to right now. Let me focus not on necessarily the next administrative thing because I forgot about it, but because some of these things got done for me so I could worry about the really cool ideas that I want to work on. And I think that if we could do that, I think that is the time element is only going to get worse, right? Like at the end of World War II, knowledge in the world doubled every 25 years. And now with IoT and connected devices, data is doubling every 25 hours. Like the human brain has not progressed to deal with any of those advancements. And we're going to have to figure out ways that technology lets us do those things. And hopefully we can fulfill some of that promise of getting to focus on the things that you really do matter the most.
Absolutely. Ted, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with what pretty much everybody is saying. What you know, what I would like to see is more people, you know, not thinking about their lives in terms of where they're going to be working. You know, thinking about, you know, how they're gonna, you know, which big company they're going to work for, and which career path they're going to go down. Are they going to be you know, I've got 2 kids. Are they going to be programmers, or are they going to be like there's 8 and 10, and the silos that they're already put in? Like, people are already asking what they're going to do with their lives, and you know, they're thinking about, they're not thinking about college, but people are thinking about college on their behalf, in terms of a career that is not markedly different than it was at the end of World War II, right? You know, maybe they're going to sit at a computer and do something different, and to me, that's just a horrifying thought. You know, I want them to do whatever it is they're going to want to do, and I think with productivity technology, the types of stuff we're talking about, as one person can get done what whole companies of people have been able to get done in the past. And so in order to have a job that's meaningful and that can support you and your family and give you flexibility, you can do that now as one person, you know, as a 2-person company, as a husband and wife team, whatever it is, in a way that you couldn't before. And over the next few years, I hope that more and more people think that the first thing they think of is, well, I'll go and do something on my own, rather than the first thing they think about is, well, maybe I'll get a job at Amazon. And that's where I hope all this leads to. I think that could, you know, I think that can really help humanity, just in terms of, you know, we're not all spending every day talking about how awful Amazon is. You know, like, you know, we can talk about something else for a while, and I think that would be great.
Wonderful, wonderful. Michael, final thoughts from that question.
Yeah, we can talk about how awful Facebook is for a change. So let's, yeah. So
it's like musical chairs,
right? So in my case, that's why we're also promoting not just, you know, our app, but also our no office lifestyle. So we have this mantra, like, work is not a place to go; it's a thing that you do. And we do that because we have an all remote company, and we, like today on my session, I was talking about the way we communicate in our remote company. And it's not only just to prove how our app awesome is that we can do that with our app and being all over the place, but for me, the accessibility of, I don't have to move to, you know, the capital city or like to Silicon Valley or somewhere else to have a good job, to have a good career, to do something meaningful. I can do it from anywhere. For me, this is like it changes everything. And what you mentioned today, Ray, that thanks to technology, we are all here in one room, although we are all from different countries or different places, different cities. It's amazing, and for me, it's still like, people still don't get it, that you can have remote companies. You can have all remote companies. You can have remote workers, and they are actually doing a good job. So many times I keep hearing, you know, yeah, Michael, I understand your company is just special. You're just different. So it works for you. That's nice. It would never work in our company. And I'm like, really? Like, really? I don't feel like a unicorn or a snowflake, really. But thanks for the compliment. So that's the thing. I think thanks to like all this technology, we can really, people can have meaningful careers, meaningful contributions from anywhere in the world, and not just from the, you know, Manhattans of the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So I'm going to try and do some rapid fire questions from the audience. And so I'm just going to read them. And then if one of you can just, we'll stumble over each other, it's perfectly fine. Okay. Just like, you know, give your first thoughts, and then we'll move on so we can try to get to as many of these questions. There's a lot of really great questions coming in. So first, I have, with so many apps being web-based, are you assuming corporates that are still locked down will have to move across to web-based tools. So do you think corporations will basically start to lower their requirements?
Yes, I don't. Is that still a big requirement? I would say it's easier for people to get on the web than to get them to download Evernote at a giant company. That's just my thought. Yeah.
I mean, the consumerization of IT has basically placed all of this decision at the end users. Like for the apps that you use when it's not an enterprise-wide system, like the end users use it. And frankly, productivity is number 2 right behind social media of crossing that firewall where it's a BYOA world, right? Bring your own app as well as bring your own device for mobile. So to think, I believe the other stat I saw is that the CMO's budget for software is now bigger than the CIO's because business leaders, line managers are the ones making the decisions about which tools their teams will use. So like there isn't a top-down world, maybe for like defense contractors and financial services for a little while longer, but to think that you're in control is an anathema for any IT DM out there now.
Wonderful. Okay, next question. What's your view on integrating work, personal/team, and personal life into a single tool, or into single tools? But I'm thinking they mean into a single tool. And so I'm gonna throw this to you, Troy, since you are one that integrates with a lot of tools. What's your view on integrating work and personal into a single?
So I've seen it all. We've got clients that are doing everything. My advice to them, and this is what I was talking about personal productivity platforms, is you get more out by putting more in. And so the more you use Evernote, the more parts of your life you use Evernote, the more you invest in personalizing it for you, the more you're going to get out of it. If you keep the separations, there are benefits from the separations, but you're not getting the full value out of the tool that you're using. And so that's what I advise people. That's what I've seen in my own life, and that's what I've seen in the clients that I work with and who ask me this question probably at least once a week.
Wonderful. I have here some comments. Well said, Christina. I love your philosophy at solving these human problems. Barbara Hemphill says that she loves Troy's comment, you can't support everything. We often tell our clients who are trying to choose the best technology, you can have anything you want, but not everything. And then another great comment, a general issue is accessibility, being able to support people with different abilities. And so that is also a really important point to bring up in the context of the future of technology, is that at some point in all of our lives, we will in some way, shape, or form be limited in our abilities, whether you have LASIK surgery or you break a wrist or you do come down with some type of disease or disability that causes a permanent limitation. Another question.
I have a comment there with accessibility, if I can jump in. So when I was at the Apple's developer conference this year, and I went to a session with the Apple designers about accessibility, and there was nobody there waiting in line. So I had like Apple designers for a whole hour about accessibility. And for me, who has no issues, with sight and all that stuff, the way they were approaching my app from accessibility standpoint, I got crushed. I got completely crushed. But on the other hand, then I from then on, I've never looked at my app the same way again, because the moment you realize what are demands of accessibility, you look at things completely differently. And I think, as you mentioned, this is also a nice. Well, it's also one of the things that we need to improve, the accessibility, and it's great that people can really get stuff done, just waving with hands and all that stuff, and then we can really help them improve that. So yeah, great stuff there.
I meet with a lot of small business owners about their websites, and the first thing I do to them is say, install a screen reader and see how your website is experienced by someone who does not see your website but through vision. And it's usually a horrible, harrowing experience for the individual, and they realize. Okay, next up, interesting note on the idea of company culture driving privacy values. It definitely seems like a trust, that trust would need to be extended. Can this be earned with transparency of security systems? And I think we've already kind of touched on that, right? That transparency and appropriateness of use of that trust is absolutely imperative there. Next up, we have some comments. The one truly finite thing in this world is time. I think that's quoting someone. And the commenter said, yes. 15 more minutes with the kids. Yes, I think that was you, Andrew. A question for the panelists. What about balance between self-regulation and discipline versus outsource everything we don't like doing? Who wants to tackle that one in terms of things? Ted, maybe you have some thoughts there since you're the outsource expert
here. Can you repeat the question though?
Sure. What about balance between self-regulation and discipline versus outsource everything we don't like doing?
I'm not sure I get the question.
So I think I'm not sure what the person's trying to say here, but just a little bit of interpretation would be that if we're dealing with self-regulation and discipline, right? The notion that we can kind of force ourselves to do something. How do we balance out basically outsourcing everything that we don't want to do because we don't have the self-discipline to do it?
Yeah, I think that certainly could be a tough balance. I think. What we tend to find it actually going in the other direction, whereas people keep things more than they should. They don't outsource enough. I think people want to, but in truth, delegating is very hard to do. It's harder than you expect. You've got a list of 20 things you need to get done. If you look at that list, if everybody goes and looks at their list right now and says, okay, let me send this to somebody, really try to do it. It's harder than you think. That thing that you've got on your list is not enough to give to somebody. That thing is going to involve a bunch of other steps that led to it that somebody's going to need to know. So I think if you could get to the point where you were delegating everything you didn't want to do, and that was a weird balance thing, you thought maybe you were going the other direction, I think you would be very productive. I think you would have plenty of stuff you would keep adding stuff you need to get to. The human appetite to get things done is endless. Whether you like it or not, there's always going to be more. And so I think the more you give, you're not going to get these things out of whack. They're both just going to go up.
I think it's also the decision to outsource in your personal life or you, as an individual is a lot the same as a company. Is it something that you create differentiated value around? And so the most obvious one for my family was laundry. Like, it takes forever. I add no value to laundry whatsoever. I might as well just send it out to somebody else to do, right? And if you pick those things, I saw one exec said she just didn't get any value or create any value by driving herself to commute. So she's like, I just pay for the Uber every day because somebody else does it and I can do something else while I'm in the car. And those are, I think you can apply a lot of the same principles that you do as a company to say, is this something that we can do better than anybody else, or are there people who specialize in this?
Wonderful. We are now, I'm going to close this out in terms of questions. We are at time. And what I wanted to do was just thank each and every one of you for being here and joining me in this conversation, in this panel about the future of productivity technology. I know that I learned a little bit more about each of you and how you see the perspective of the world changing as technology changes and our understanding of personal productivity. And so Michael Solinsky of Noseby, Ted Roden of Fancy Hands, Andrew Malcolm of Evernote, Troy Christmas of TaskClone, Christina Willner of Amazing Marvin. Thank you all for joining me here today for the Future Productivity Technology panel.
Great, thank you.
Guys. Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful. And so that closes us out, folks watching in the live stream. And so the next set of sessions are starting in just another minute. And so if you are interested, there is a schedule that is in each of the track sessions. So if you go over to the featured section, you'll be able to find that. And so we have Mike Vardy from Productivityist, who's up in track 1, productivity. Track 2, we've got Stacy Harmon presenting in track 2. She's our Evernote certified consultant talking about Evernote and GTD. And then in track 3, we have Casey Pade talking about digital and physical systems for processing when things pile up. And then in the professional track, we have Joseph Varghese, one of our session leaders, talking about hacking your focus, making every day a winning day. And so with that, I want to thank again our panelists for being here with me for this session, and enjoy the rest of your Productivity Summit, folks. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.